Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. What's up? What's up? What's up on this Friday? The week is ending. And it's another fast week. I know it was a short week because we kicked it off with the Monday week, with Monday being the holiday. So I love the 4 day weeks. I've been campaigning for them for about 20 years. 4 day work weeks. so
I would prefer three, but we get what we can.
oh well, we got the hybrids and we got the remotes going on now, so we did got a little bit better. But I
Right.
always have been campaigning for them four. I always wanted 4 10s. I done 10 anyway, so to me to have 4 10s was already cool with me. Oh
So,
boy.
welcome to another episode of Credible Vulnerability Moments. And as y'all know, July is going to be the month of Mr. Carl Shawn Watkins. We focusing on vulnerability. Of course, I'm going to chime in. And if there's anything related to websites, I'll talk about it. But definitely, we are focusing on vulnerability this month. I think we're gonna have one Friday, which is gonna be a replay Friday, but
Yeah,
everything else you come in live and in charge.
live and
And
indirect.
just want to say, yes, just want to say welcome, good morning,
Good
good
evening. We got somebody at
evening, good
nighttime there.
afternoon. Yes, everywhere that y'all are from, because we are international. That's what Carl spoke it into existence,
Yes.
and that's exactly what we do now.
Yeah.
So make sure you drop in where you're coming from. If you have any questions, do not hesitate. We will get at them. And I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors.
Yeah.
Give the thank you and give the recognition to the Black Toolbox, a book by our friend Martin Pratt. He's really about making sure that folks are aware of what's going on in their communities and that we can help uplift each other, not just be there for the grind, but help make sure that we are all coming up together and not trying to leave folks behind if we can help it. And so grab your book and, of course, join the live business mastermind group with Russ and Scott. These are two amazing folks who make sure that you guys understand how to communicate with each other and learn from each other. So it's not just them talking at you, it's them talking with you and helping us all come together with some type of ideas to move our business and our lives forward, because especially if we're doing videos, you want to understand how can we really make this a process and not just you jumping on a video randomly. It's all, everything should have a focus and a purpose. And Carl and I are part of that. So I just wanted to make sure that we gave those shout outs. And of course, give a shout out to ourselves, because we do some work. We get it in.
Yeah.
So if you need help with your website strategy, because a lot of times we're just so busy throwing something up just to get it out, we don't really sit back and figure out how is this website, how is this really benefiting our overall goal and our overall achievement. So if you need help trying to start to build that digital marketing foundation, hit me up at brooklyncustomdesigns.com/SOS. That's BKLYN customdesigns.com/SOS. And if you would like to join my text message community, just jump on the screen at that site and you can scan my QR code, or you can text me Brand Misfit VIP at 74121. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to work with Mr. Carl Shawn Watkins, tell the folks how to do that, sir.
Yo, the question says and asks it for you. Are you ready to be transformed? All right. This is my vulnerability transformation program. It's a 4 week intensive. Yes, 4 weeks. We're going to get it done. We got a step for each week that we're going to put you through, and we're going to allow you to work through those feelings that's holding you back from being the authentic you, and also developing and cultivating the leader that others want to follow. So it's a 4 week transformation program. Register today. CarlShawnWatkins.com/VTP, or you can check out bevulnerable.club/VTP. Either or, sign up, register, click it, let's go, let's get it. So you can be the leader the other wants to follow. I know you're ready.
All right. And speaking of ready, that's what we are. And I see a lot of folks dropping their comments and hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello.
What's up?
Uh, um, I think we ready to kick this off because, yeah, we it's Friday, so nobody just trying to randomly be on, but we definitely want to make sure that everybody does what we like to do is take action and get some information that we can use and we can do something with. So let's jump into this leveraging your vulnerability through the myth buster. And the myth buster for today is all vulnerability is harmful. Now,
Mhm.
you say that's a myth buster. How you busting this myth today?
Well, the myth is the final word of that. You know, me being the wordsmith guy, I just got to operate on the words and the meanings, and we so much associated. The funny thing about it that's really happened to the pandemic, and I want to shift it back just a bit here. The funny thing that has happened during the course of the pandemic, we have identified that vulnerability is not a weakness, right? We've social media wise, we've said it in meetings, we've said it in Zooms, we've tried to build ourselves up with this. But the thing is, there's no belief system behind that because everyone that I continue to work with and talk with me, it still hinders them to be vulnerable. So, in the essence of that, what I said with the harmful piece of that is people think all vulnerability is harmful. There are points and places in vulnerability which strategically and intentionally done are definitely edifying for you and the person that you're dealing with. And this is the piece of the vulnerability that which I try to change the narrative on. Of course, being exposed to harm and danger is always subtle when you're being vulnerable with somebody. There, you're already opening up to somebody about something concerning you. So, in the essence of that, we are protected by nature, and that's how our psyche is. So, we want to guard the things that we think others will use to hurt us. But the key point about that is, in the essence of dealing with others, those things that you open up also open up inside them, and that gives opportunity for growth to happen. I was once told that if you keep I had a patch of grass. I'll give y'all a quick visual. I had a patch of grass in the backyard when I was a kid. All the time over that grass, I used to take the trash can. I used to put the trash can lid there, and I never returned it back to the trash can because kids just run out playing, throw it in the trash, and I left the lid on there. But every time we would come out to cut the grass, and I'll say, "Oh man, I ain't put up the lid." I pulled the lid up from the grass. That circular patch for where I left the lid was always brown. It didn't get sun and it didn't grow, and it became eventually a bald patch, which my dad had a real problem with. That's something for another day. But it eventually became a bald patch. Now, the visual I'm trying to show you is that yes, that patch of grass was secured, which our vulnerability does for us. It secures us. It allows no one to get in to penetrate if we don't let it in, and it allows no one to get into the things that we deem will hurt us. But what it also does, which is the greater of it, it does not allow those things to come in to feed us, to grow us, to cultivate us. So when we do that, we end up looking like that patch of grass. Yes, on the outside of us and looking out from a distance, it looks like we're fine and okay. But in the essence, there are things down on the inside of that little patch that didn't get the sun, that didn't get the rain, that didn't get the growth, that didn't get the ability to grow because the grass lid was only that tall. It stunt a lot of growth in there. And this is how we do when we turn to be vulnerable, when we don't want to be vulnerable in situations. We don't want to be vulnerable with people. And as leaders, we definitely don't want to be vulnerable with those we lead. How can I entrust you to lead me anywhere if you're not susceptible to be vulnerable about things that you have no control over? It's not changing who you are, it's actually defining who you are. And that's why I say all vulnerability is harmful. Mythbuster. And if I was on uh, my show with Steve Harvey, I would give you an X. Family food. Oh, it's Friday, y'all. It's Friday. I'm feeling good. It's Friday.
I would actually venture into saying, with that, with the vulnerability, all vulnerability being harmful, we also have to be careful not to weaponize vulnerability. And I think that that can, I wonder if that can also play a role in people being weary of being vulnerable because others will weaponize it against them, never let it go. They'll try to throw things back at you to cause you to stumble if they see that you're doing different, you're speaking differently. And we've seen examples of that before. People trying to get out of their bad moments in the past and do something different, live differently, but then you'll always have somebody digging up that dirt and saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, remember this? Did you know? Did you know?" Like, so sometimes people get weary of that. So I would venture to definitely say, be cautious that you're not weaponizing vulnerability.
And the key part that I'm glad you mentioned that part because it is important. With vulnerability, it doesn't work on the offensive, and that's how we try to use it. Weaponize is a good term, but I use the term on the offensive because we try to be vulnerable on the offensive. I'm gonna let you in, but I'm kind of like push you off, which is the guard, which is human nature, and I'm not talking against that. It's an avenue of practicing and embracing. Once you do that, it becomes a systematic thing to you how and when to do it, and that's why I use the term so much strategically and intentionally. Because yes, don't get me wrong, and I'll say this, maybe I can make this crystal clear if I haven't before. There are opportunities for you to get harmed, or your let's just say your feelings to get hurt, or people to expose things about you that you may not want them to know. The bonus thing about that is with the exposure, and Charlene talks about it a lot when we talk about these segments, the 8 Mile movie. The opportunity for you to get ahead of that presents the embracement and the empowerment that you have. Because when we're not vulnerable with people, we're allowing people to systematically put us in a box. And whether you visualize that or not, your actions will tell the same. So a lot of times we try to cross pollinate that with being transparent, meaning I'm going to be vulnerable because I'm transparent. Those two are opposites of each other. Being transparent and not invulnerable, they do intertwine in how they present themselves and manifest themselves, but they're not the same in meaning. So a lot of times you do hold that power back. You do hold that back for the simple fact that you're worried or you're leery of someone using that, because people do use that as a heartstring. They do use it to present situations and circumstances that may not be legitimate. And I'm sure all of us, I don't care how guarded you are, have been taken. So you're not going to protect yourself from not being taken. You're just not. So you have to understand and embracing that. Pick and choose the avenues of which that's going to develop and grow you, and not worry about what's going to be lost from you. Because a lot of times, truth be said, a lot of stuff you're holding on to, you should have been got rid of anyway. A lot of stuff
True,
you're
but
trying to hide, you know what I mean? You should have owned as what you did, the mistake you made, and the lesson you learned from it. And I think if we embrace that throughout life, we'll be more empowered than stand behind the shadows and shame of what happened to us or what somebody did to us in our past.
true. But where my angle was coming from is, now I don't want, I want all of us to be mindful that we are not the ones weaponizing vulnerability. Can it be
No.
weaponized against us? Of course, but I still
Yes.
need us to be very aware, because in the essence of folks trying to be advocates, trying to
Yeah.
speak on behalf of others, it also can quickly transform into you weaponizing things against someone. You never allowing the person to grow, or you're not giving the person actionable steps to grow. Because it's easy to tell everybody what they do wrong. Now,
Mhm.
how are you going to help them figure out, okay, next time, how about we do this? How about we did this? It's I've witnessed it be harder for people to be the adults in a situation, and because I'll see them go down together in the mud, and I'm like, okay. So as one is trying to say they're being an advocate, they're really in the mud with the ones that they claim they're calling out, or call whatever new terms they want to do. At the end of the day, you're calling somebody out. So at the end of all of that, I just want us to be mindful that we're not weaponizing things against each other in the guise of trying to uplift each other as well. And yes, I saw a couple of questions coming in from Giannis, and one of them is, if researchers have already studied the differences between collective behavior in a crowd and collective behavior in an office, is there a true collective meaning?
Yes, that's also a question. I think I put that in there. The collective is what we're experiencing now, more so than not. The collective haven't been manifested for the simple fact that people individually, because vulnerability is an individual thing, and it manifests itself individually based upon the individual, the empowerment they have to use it for either their good or growth, or the power that they have to use it to hide in that. So, but it has come a collective. It has come a collective in which they're doing studies on now, based upon the reaction and the manifestation of the pandemic upon millions of. So, in the essence of that, it's become a study ward of saying, okay, collectively, we as a society have started to embrace our vulnerabilities because the pandemic has pushed us to that place. It has pushed us before the mirror, and that's really what that collective is really saying. Us as a society has pushed us with the tragedy or catastrophe or calamity. Most of the time, that exposes the vulnerability in people. 9/11 was a big framer that I use that a lot of time. 9/11, people start praying more, people start getting in touch more, they start reevaluating their life, they start loving loved ones, they start embracing. Those are some of the things that we build up as barriers on a continuum because we don't want to let anyone in, and we want to kind of live our life to some normalcy. The true normalcy is in the collective, is that if we engage with those who showing those vulnerabilities in a positive manner, instead of using it as a weapon and as a weaponized, we'll see the growth in a whole collectively. We'll see people grow collectively. This is the process that I really try to teach. And I'm also, it's awesome that you brought that up, Giannis. This is the process that I try to teach when I'm talking to leaders over the ones that they lead. If you're showing that on a collective basis, you see collectively your team wins. Collectively, the growth and development and innovation in your departments and your managers. And this is what we're facing now during this pandemic. You've seen the growth in those who want to be entrepreneur because they're stepping out of those spots where vulnerability has kept them. Places are saying, I need to do this because 9 to 5 says I'm successful. No, I actually can do my passion. I actually can do my passion. I can work from home. I can homeschool my kids. See, we're coming out of these patches, and that's where the collective study has come from. Let's see how people are manifesting themselves now that they're put in front of this catastrophe. I think this will last a little bit longer than the catastrophe, such as 9/11 and those kind of things, because of not so much of the pain or disregarding the pain of those that have passed or the badness that have happened because of the pandemic. But I think on the underbelly of that, there's been a lot of growth in passion toward what people really want to be and who they really want to be. And I think collectively, that's where the vulnerability as a collective is bearing us much fruit right now. I know we're giving a lot of credence to the Great Resignation, but I give more credence to the ability of people who reevaluated how they're living, and now they're doing things that better benefit them. I think that's really what I would give the onus to the Great Resignation to. Not so much people just leaving jobs because they don't want to work.
Right. And Giannis also brought up, and you mentioned it, you touched on it a bit about weaponizing vulnerability to survive. No, because at the end of the day, just like I said, if you are trying to advocate for someone and helps keep their vulnerability space a safe space and create safe spaces, and now you're in the mud with someone that you think has done harm, both of you now are filled with mud. You're both covered. So someone else from the outside just sees two people or two sides covered in mud. They can't tell the difference of who's doing this on behalf of survival and who's just doing it to be rude or whatever. So you once you weaponize something, especially something like vulnerability, it's never going to be a good space or a good moment for anyone. It will never come out well. So the whole point of not weaponizing it is it has to be crucial, especially as a collective, because we already see how things go and can shift left and go wrong, especially through social media. And when people are claiming that they're defending someone, and before you know it, things get ugly. Now both sides are saying things that are disrespectful and nasty. So how can you now say, well, I said it because I'm surviving, or I and you said it because you just wanted to? Absolutely not. Right? So when the I'll just go to the basic: two wrongs don't make a right.
Mhm.
It just doesn't. So weaponizing vulnerability, I just say stay away from that altogether and step up above that. If you see someone weaponizing vulnerability, yes, call that out, but do it in a way that you can give solutions. A lot of
Mhm.
times people do call outs with no solution, and that does nothing for anybody. It just does nothing but tires out the collective. So now the collective is exhausted, or you have people in the collective who don't want to be a part of it anymore because it's just messy. So you always want to make sure that you're being careful and you're understanding what is it that you're doing and how are you using vulnerability? How are you protecting vulnerability? I think that's what we need to step into, protecting vulnerability in a positive way and remove ourselves from the thought process of weaponizing. And I just want to thank everybody who's jumping in and saying their hellos and having this conversation with us. So let's start taking some action steps on what is it that we can really do to leverage this vulnerability. And of course, the first part is creating a safe environment. And like I said, weaponizing in this environment does not work. I see it fail time and time again. People leave in tears, like they say in Anastasia, that little bat said, "This can only end in tears." That's
Oh wow.
exactly what I see. So, for you, Carl, how can we start to create that safe space? Yes, everybody talks about creating a safe environment, but then they don't know how to, or they fail at it because the way their approach is wrong, it's off. So, what have you seen worked? What are some best practices for us to really do this?
Best practices, especially in the workplace, comes from on high. Um, and that's just about the pattern of how life is. The dad is normally the head of the home, systematically speaking, and how it's been. That creativeness comes from the top. When dad's like fluttered or splattered or whatever in the homes, that rolls downhill because then mom is kind of anxious or the children are walking on eggshells. That same kind of thing happens in the essence of corporate and jobs as well. So we have the leaders that are not fundamentally intentionally. It must be an intentional process. And this is where the awareness comes in at. This is where the opportunity for the leader to shine comes in at, more so than just the braggadocious, an opportunity to give others room to grow because it is so essential for us as leaders to create that safe space. What that safe space entails, it gives opportunity for mistakes to be made, growth to happen, development to occur, and encouragement to continually be the driving force. Because a lot of times we look for avenues for mistakes to be launching pads for finger pointing, and leaders are at the top of their game at that. It has been for I've been working in corporate for 30 years. Has been. Area I don't think I've met, if I have, I can count on one hand where a leader haven't taken the opportunity for a failure to point out the origin of that failure. And when I say
Mhm.
that, I'll go right along with what Charlene is saying, not with a compassion of solutions or involving everybody's solutions. They always do the finger pointing. Now, this is a prime example that I'm sure a lot of you that's listening at the sound of my voice have been involved in. There's one particular individual in the company that does something, or in that team, or in that department. Yet the manager will call all the department into a meeting, right? Yeah, follow me because I know y'all have had it. Call the whole department into the meeting to roundabout talk about this issue that that manager already know who committed. The opportunity there is so lost. And leadership, I don't know where they got this from. I don't know what playbook they read this out of, but it has been a passing thing because I've worked at quite a few Fortune 500, 150 companies, and all the leaders have done this. I've called them a meeting about the meeting for the meeting. So what they talk about is an incident that they know who it was done by because the reports are easy. It's easy to tag mistakes. It's easy to come back and say paperwork lets them know who put this in the system. They will tell that issue or that problem to the entire body, the entire narrative, therefore destroying the foundation of a safe environment. Because at that point in time, everyone that has heard this are now on pins and needles about making a mistake because the exposure to them and their reputation is going to be much more harmful. Now, the leader got an opportunity to say, okay, this safe space that I've created, I'm going to go to that individual that do that, not with a blaming, but with an opportunity to say, okay, this happened. How can we, notice I said we, how can we do this together? How can I give you what you need so this doesn't happen again? How can I and us together do this so the department doesn't suffer from this being done again? There's a few things that happens there. There's the opportunity for that person that does that to feel good about, even though they made a mistake, They feel good about the opportunity to rectify it and keep their dignity. They feel good about the opportunity to pass that on to someone else who may be harboring a mistake that's being hid and you have no idea that's there. And they won't tell you because they don't want to be put out there on the carpet. So when you have this safe environment and you create it from the top down, you enable everyone that's working in there, everyone that you're leading, to have an opportunity to, most of the time, if you give people a chance to fix a mistake, and this is most of the time, if you give them an opportunity to fix the mistake without exposing the mistake, they will do all they can to correct the mistake. This is just natural. Of course, you're gonna have knuckleheads that's gonna have it anyway, but you got knuckleheads and everything. But for the most part, people want to do the right thing. And if you give them an opportunity to save face in doing that, they will correct it and they will do it. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. I've seen it happen.
Correct, correct. And when you say that, it makes so much sense on why are people not just calling out and pulling that person aside that they know this is, look, you and me, we have issues. Is it personality wise? Is it just you don't have couth? What is it? Right? Let's get down to the bottom of this. People are so busy being PC, politically correct, walking on eggshells, that they don't want to address directly who they're talking to. I've been in so many meetings where people are talking in circles and saying, well, you know, some folks and some this and some that, or they call out an entire group of people without going to the direct people. Like, don't do that. Because now the people who you may not be speaking to, they're offended, and you can't understand why they're offended. Because you decided to throw some generalized term at them and they should just suck it up and eat it. No. People who are ready to speak up for themselves will do that. We lose touch and we lose focus on those who cannot speak for themselves, those who are either uncomfortable or they just can't. They just cannot come out and say, this is what's happening, or I didn't do this, or this is what I meant. Instead, you have folks doing this whole call out process with a group of people, and the rest of us is sitting there like, well, who the heck are you talking to? Like, what happened? Can we be specific? I need names, I need dates, I need places, I need times. What's happening? And I think, and I really don't want to just say old school or new school or whatever, but I just really think we've gotten into such this rut of PC-ness and let me just talk in a circle. And the way that folks speak to each other on social media, they doing that in real life. That does not work. If you have issues, if you have a place that you see someone is messing around with the safe environment that you're creating, pull that person into a room as their leader and talk to them. That's your job as a leader. And if you see that you have a group dynamic that's happening, then talk to the group. You don't need to talk to an entire organization. Talk directly to that group and be done with it. And I think that's where a lot of that head on conversation never happens. They're too busy worrying about legal ease. They worrying about what the lawyer might have said. They say, oh, well, you know what, this is, and what's annoying is there's a lot of places, organizations, companies that have steps and actionable steps in place, but they don't use them.
Sure.
So you got stuff on paper that you're not even looking at, but you expect the rest of us to know it. I'm just like, I can't no more. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. That's my
Oh
two
man.
cents. But
Yeah.
let's jump into the next one. And it's about being authentic with your team. And that, I think what we just talked about brings us right into this. Be
Yes.
real about your ish, right? If you're going to do something, then do it. If you're not, then be quiet. That's just how I look at it. Stop with the rah rah, stop with the yin and the yang, and just get
Come
down
on.
to it. Like if there are action steps that need to be done, then take them. Other than
Mhm.
that, what's the purpose? Then everything that all that rah rah you've been doing before is useless, right? When people used to pop off at the mouth but then did nothing, everybody knew we're not going to your fight after school. You just gonna keep talking all day, right? We came for
Yes.
action. So I'm not saying fighting, but I'm just saying action. People want to see action. If you're going to create a safe space and you have things in place to protect that safe space, now that we're going to start talking about it and being authentic in this team, we want to see you do some actionable steps to be protective. And that's where leveraging your vulnerability comes in. You're reinforcing that, look, you see how important it is to protect this space of vulnerability, and you're ready to go toe to toe for it. What's your take on this?
Yeah, he was right on the mark with that, and uh, being authentic with your team, and allowing them to see that. Allow if you just allow yourselves, and this is from the leader's perspective. If you allow yourselves to be vulnerable, what it does, it enable others to understand you better, right? We think that when we don't show them vulnerability, we give people a full picture of ourselves. There's nothing further from the truth. When you're hiding the things that are vulnerable about, and vulnerabilities are just that, weaknesses. Okay, so let's get that simplicity of what they truly are. And so we won't be thinking about vulnerability as this big monster up under the bed as a kid. It's a monster under there. No, your vulnerabilities are your weaknesses, point blank. And we don't never want anyone to know we're weak, which makes no sense to me because that's weak. And even thinking that, right? So to get past the simplicity of that, or get past the complexity of that, which people make it. The simplicity piece of that is vulnerability is just saying, I can't do a particular thing. It's really what it's saying in a voice of manifestation. Or I've done something before in that avenue or that vein and I've made a mistake in it. Okay, go and interview anyone in the world and they'll tell you that they've done that. So you're not alone in this aspect. And the ability for you to keep it doesn't make you more empowered than the one who exposed it. See, this is the falsities of which we figure about. If I don't show my vulnerability, that makes me stronger than the next. Absolutely not. I don't even really know who you are if I can't see no vulnerabilities or things in you which are weaknesses, because everybody's not perfect. You're not going to be, right? So therein lies, I have a better trust and understanding of you if I can understand the vulnerability that you refuse to expose. Case in point, example, I'm sick. I make a doctor's appointment. I go to the doctor. I don't tell them why I feel. I don't explain to them my symptoms. What's the purpose of going to the doctor, right? That's a visual for you to see how vulnerability will negate, not showing your vulnerabilities will negate you being improved. I'm gonna go to the doctor. I'm gonna make an appointment. I'm gonna tell her however you do it, whether you go in person or you telepath it or whatever. And yeah, doc, I made an appointment 9:30. Oh, you sure? What's going on? What's going on? What's your symptoms? I don't know. I'm not sharing any. I just made an appointment. How stupid does that sound, right? And I don't mean that in the essence of how I just said it, but I want you to see it how it looks. If you're not sharing those weaknesses or you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you're not giving the opportunity for you to be better. So allowing yourself to be vulnerable enables others to understand you because they're seeing the true you. So now they can interact with you in an essence or a way that they say, okay, it makes it easier for me to follow you because I'm learning the real you. It makes it easier to invest in maybe your vision or your strategy because I see where it's coming from. I see the origin of that. Leaders, take this to mind. I see that when I share with my team some of the vulnerability pieces or some of the things that I don't necessarily have a grip on, it encourages others to be open about things that they're suffering with. It gives them an opportunity to take hold of the things that they aren't sure about. So now, if you're authentic with your team will be authentic with you. Then you can actually get somewhere. Then you can get somewhere. So, like my grandmother used to say, it's another grandmaism. She said, when you get down to the brass tacks, I still don't know what that is, but you older people, older than me. So in other words, I used to say, when you get down to all that, to wipe away all that fluff and let people know the real, then people can trust you and do with you with the real. And that's really what it is. Being authentic is just being that real, not the real hood real. I'm real. I'm from the streets. Oh, you better not try this. Not that kind of Hollywood real. I'm talking about the real person that you are, where people can understand it. Oh, Carl's like this. And you'll see how people treat you differently and work with you differently. The facades will be broken. People will come to you different. People won't have the whispering going on behind your back because they'll have some. Well, let me take that back. You still have some knuckleheads that whisper. I don't want you. I don't want you to think it's going to be a Mr. Clean world after you expose some vulnerabilities. but you get
You
my
flew.
point. Yeah, you get my point. I don't want you to live in fairyland, but you'll start seeing the difference in how people treat you, approach you. You'll also see some of the nonsense that you'll bypass. Because I've learned in work being vulnerable and being authentic to a lot of things and what I tolerated and what I didn't. A lot of office stuff, I had no idea what's going on because it went past me.
Facts.
It went past me. It's like, Carl, did you hear about such and such? Man, I had no idea. You know why? Because Carl had this environment that they know not to bring that to Carl. They know Carl wasn't having that. They know Carl wasn't hopping in on nobody, denouncing or bad mouthing somebody else. So I didn't hear a lot of those things going on. So when those things happen and you've been authentic with people like that, they'll treat you in that same vein. Like my mom used to say, people know who they can do stuff with. That's exactly what being authentic with your team is. When you're being
Yes.
authentic with your team, you'll see the authentic ones come out and shine that you're leading, and you'll see some of the characteristics and some of the attributes that you want in that team to fulfill your team. So that's what being authentic with your team means to me.
Yeah, so as you start to learn who can handle it, because not
Right,
everybody has the stomach to
right.
deal with not only being vulnerable, but creating the safe space and protecting that space and being authentic in that space. You really need to start creating a group of mentors that
Mm-hmm.
can get people into the organization and be those pivotal people that we always know, like, okay, so it's going to be you, it's you, these are the mentors you can always go to. People want to know that, like, if there's a tough time ahead, who can they reach out to, who can they get for support? That's where the mentor groups come in. And not just a company wide, it's organization wide. Do you have the bandwidth? Sometimes people want to put a whole lofty goal in place, expect it to roll out in 2 days, and they don't have the bandwidth, they don't got the bodies, they don't have nothing in place
Mm-hmm.
for this. But they're just like, well, y'all won't do it. You need to make sure your organization can handle a mentor group,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these are things to strive towards. These are things to work towards. So when you start to bring people in the organization, start looking at them, having these conversations, having I would even say having those meetings where people can come lunchtime and just talk. Just see how it feels to be vulnerable. Can you be vulnerable? And then if you are, how are you reacting to your peers? Because if you're great with your peers, okay, maybe you can be a mentor. Now let's approach you and ask you, do you have the capacity? Because individuals may want to help you, but they don't have the capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no shame for them, but you have to, as you being vulnerable and you being authentic, you have to recognize that. So what's your say on that, Carl?
No, that's absolutely it. And just to piggyback on that, and when I use the term mentors, because a lot of times we get the definition of mentor, and we kind of paint that on what it is. And mentoring takes on a lot of hats, so to speak. So mentoring is not just the basis of, okay, I'm good at my job, I want to show you my job to teach you my job. Mentoring encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses the mental, it encompasses maybe the spiritual. It encompasses the guidance. It encompasses the understanding. So all of those things come about in being mentor. And what I meant by creating a mentor group in your organization is someone that feels comfortable with being that. I know when I used to drink a long time ago, people used to talk about how great bartenders were and how they were in there, and how bartenders, and I used to have a couple of bartenders that were friends, and these were people that were able to commune and talk socially, and a lot of times had good advice from hearing so much from other people. And when I thought about that, when they say, yeah, it's like, man, I'm like a counselor, I'm like a marriage therapist, I'm like, and I was like, I threw it to the wind because I just thought they were talking. But when I started listening to some of the advice and some of the things that they would say just conversationally, And I was, oh man, that makes a lot of sense. And like, where'd you get this? Like, man, I've been telling people this for years. I've been doing the same thing that I talk about with creating the mentor group. There are people that are in your organization that are good with people, that are good social people, that are able to understand and identify problems and issues with people. These are people that you can use as mentors, not in the essence of just saying, okay, you work well and you do this good, and I've never found a problem with your job. Go tell them what to do. No, there's a coaxial part of mentoring that says, okay, we have to match up. I got to groove with you. Even if I got a mentor that can tell me everything about the job I want to know, if our attitudes and our relationship ain't cool, I'm not receiving anything from him. So that's why I mean it's a vastness with the mentor. You have people in your organization that are not busybodies, that stay to themselves, that do the things they call for. They come back from lunch on time. You may think that's a bad thing, but I had a lot of people I work with stole time. They always went over an hour at lunchtime. Do you know that's actually offense to get fired for? If you read your
Yep.
handbook, you know. But that's for another day. I don't
Yep.
want to. I don't want to tell on y'all who don't come back for lunch on time. But those are the kind of things I say when you get the mentor and you create those in the groups, and they don't have to be physically created. They don't have to be
Mhm.
nothing that's stamped on that's on the door to say this is the group of the mentors. Doesn't have to be
Right.
highlighted. It could be a systematically thing done by the leader that's over there, that's over that, or HR through the organization piece, and say, okay, these individuals we have selected. When you have issues, when you have circumstances, when you have situations, reach out to one of them. They're in the capacities of first and foremost being confidential, keeping your stuff under wraps, not being the bullhorns of the organization. Yo, Carl just went to lunch and didn't come back on time. Not being like that, but just being those ones that say, okay, I'm having this issue in there. Could you kind of help me out? Yeah, I'll help you out. We'll keep this between us. I'll make sure you get it. I'll make sure you get developed in that. I'll also see if I can set you up with some training and some things to enable you to be better in that. These are the kind of mentors that I'm speaking of that the leaders have the ability to do without going to get money and funds from HR. Because I'm sure you got these kind of people already in your organization. You got the ones that come in, put their foot down, their head down, they do their work, they turn it out, they're never in anything. You don't hear nothing bad about them, and you don't hear them in a whole lot of nonsense. Go up to those, ask those one, would you be interested in just kind of being the mouthpiece of the word for this situation if it comes along? Yeah, sure, sure. I wouldn't mind doing that at all. Sure. Yeah, anytime. Just let me know. That's right there. You've built a relationship and you built a bridge to the mentorship that your organization can have that can diffuse problems before it even get to the level of where it calls for management to have those meetings for everybody to come and it's the one person. Yes.
Yeah. So as we are wrapping up this episode, I just want to make sure that we do a quick run through because want to make sure we have that so you guys remember what is it that is behind this leveraging vulnerability. You want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of believing all vulnerability is harmful. There's
Yeah.
ways around that. There's ways to avoid the harm, and there's ways not to cause harm through vulnerability. And part of that is learning how to leverage vulnerability properly. Create a safe environment. They call it safe spaces, they call whatever they need to do. But you want a space where people can actually speak and be vulnerable and not feel like they're going to be attacked or they're going to have their vulnerability used against them in a later time, right? Like they say, and when some folks get arrested, anything they say can be used
And it
against
will
them.
be used against you in the court of law.
Yes,
So you
we
got the
not
right to
doing
remain
that.
silent.
Right. We're not doing that with vulnerability, right? That's where the safe space comes in. And a
Yes.
safe space is not a one way. I also want to reiterate that. Safe
Yeah,
space goes both
absolutely.
ways. For if people disagree with you, it's a safe space for them to do so and not you trying to shame them into seeing your way.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
all another topic we'll talk about. We want to make sure that you can be authentic with the team of people that you're putting together. You want to be the person to show rather than only tell. You want to be able to be that example. And of course, create a mentor group in your organization. If you have people who have the capacity, who have the fortitude to be proper mentors,
Mhm.
let that group start to formulate, and
Right.
also start to set up rules or criterias. What would make for a good mentor? Some people
Absolutely.
just want to have their friends be their mentors. Absolutely not,
Yeah.
because then your friends won't tell you that you're doing
I'll call you to
wrong.
the carpet. That's it.
Right. Call you to the carpet, probably have to wrap you in the carpet. We don't know what's gonna happen. But if you acting up, you acting up. And you have to have people around you who can tell you that without you getting overly sensitive and all kinds of nonsense having a fallout. So you guys just take that. And of course, if there's anything that you need, you have me, Carl. Connect with us here on LinkedIn. We both have our business pages. Please connect with us. Carl is a powerhouse for vulnerability, so please make sure that the questions that you have for him, keep them coming, because we will come back and respond, especially Mr. Carl. Carl
Yeah.
does a lot of the outreach.
Yeah.
But thank
I'll do
you
the
all
outreach.
for coming through. Yes, good morning. And Karen up early. But good morning to everybody. And make sure that you guys have an amazing weekend and of course the rest of your week. And we will catch y'all next week.
Next
Bye.
week. Deuces.